Getting over childhood trauma from abuse. Sometimes the past just won't stay in the past. If you've ever survived childhood trauma, you know exactly what that's like. I'm Jeremy Arts, and during my career as a therapist, I've seen countless times how awful childhood trauma can be. The things we experience in our childhood often stay with us our entire lives. And when those experiences are traumatic, they can have lifelong effects. People in my field call it unresolved trauma. While unresolved trauma often requires professional help to deal with it effectively, there are a few simple things you can do to help keep the past where it belongs in the meantime. First, a few words about unresolved trauma. Unresolved trauma are traumatic experiences and memories you haven't let go of. It's entirely possible to have unresolved trauma from things that happen in adulthood, but most unresolved trauma comes from the past. Trauma can be very painful to live with, and we often try to protect ourselves by avoiding or repressing the unpleasant emotions associated with trauma. When you experience trauma as a child, you often lack the emotional and verbal vocabulary to express your feelings. So many times only the symptoms of trauma get treated during childhood, leaving the causes unaddressed until much later in life. Symptoms of unresolved trauma include flashbacks, panic attacks, nightmares, and more. Childhood trauma is also a major driver of personality disorders and substance abuse. I want to be clear that addressing childhood trauma is far more effective when done with professional help. That said, there are a few things you can do to make the symptoms of childhood abuse and unrealized trauma a little easier to live with. Practice acceptance. Practicing acceptance means acknowledging you experienced trauma in childhood, but that may not define your entire childhood experience. It's not easy to accept both the good and the bad experiences during childhood, but it'll help you come to terms with the parts that harmed you. Recognize the impact of trauma. Childhood trauma has lifelong impacts. Recognizing the source of the impacts involves being completely honest about life events, certain people in your life, and your needs. Learn and know your triggers. Learning how to recognize your trauma triggers isn't easy. You have to identify any and all situations, events, and people that remind you of what you've survived. But it pays off. By understanding your trauma triggers, you can then manage your responses to them and find healthy, effective ways to cope. Live in the moment. Living in the moment helps fight dissociation and keep you safely rooted in the here and the now. Asking for help is the best possible way to address the trauma you've survived. At the Edge Treatment Center, our team will help you develop and practice every one of these tips. If you've ever been through trauma and are watching this video, you're a survivor. Guided by a trauma-informed approach that recognizes the need of survivors of trauma, our programs here at The Edge will help you overcome the lingering effects of childhood abuse and trauma. Just reach out to us and we'll get started. If you've survived trauma, I'd love to hear how you live with it. Share in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching our video. See you next time.